All right, here we go. Hello and welcome into the Section 109 podcast from Studio Breezy in the Highland Park adjacent area of Ridgedale. I didn't realize I just doxed myself. It's Breezy with Matthew, and I am drinking out of a Cat's mug that, by the way, my wife bought for Matthew. If you can see this on video, she felt that whenever we podcasted that Matthew should have a blue, the inside is blue, cat mug. And so she bought this for you. I'm drinking out of that in honor of you, good sir. And I am here, and we are here to talk about a game that I needed a lot more coffee and beer for.
Oh, you want to do this?
Yeah. Let's open these beers up. The Chattanooga Football Club versus
Corona Extra.
Savannah. We're going to pretend we're on a beach in Savannah and talk about this game. So if you didn't get a chance...
Which we will be in September.
Absolutely. So if you didn't get a chance to watch, this game finished, unfortunately, 1-1. It was a wild game. We're going to get into it. We're going to dissect it a little bit. But Matthew, tell me, a couple days later, with the game going on in the background and us reviewing it, how are you feeling?
I feel better now than I did on Saturday evening.
Give me the cliff notes of why. I know we're going to talk about our three things in the game, but why are you feeling better?
Yeah, so like in the heat of the game, you don't remember, and our vantage point isn't always that great. So you don't necessarily see. All you see is the missed. We'll just say it's like the missed pass. Often the pass before the pass.
You mean the missed calls?
There were that too, but we'll worry about that later. I'm thinking of like the hockey assist.
Mm-hmm.
You slip a ball in for a guy that can cuts it back for a tap in or whatever. The pass before the pass, I have no concept for in real time. Like was it just off the edge of the boot? Was it like 13 miles too far? I have no idea. I can't tell that. And
we can take a break here if you want for just a split second while Ella arrives home to her house and the dogs go crazy.
Well,
there we go.
I'll just talk through it a little bit. So like I have no concept for that, and all I can see when the pass is not completed is
it wasn't
the
completed.
pass was not completed, and when I rewatch the game, I can see that pass was miles too far, or it was miles under hit, or like the timing was just a sliver of a second off.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the Savannah game, spoiler alert, I don't think we were very good. But I think there was a lot of that, like you like to use the word danger adjacent. There was a lot of that danger adjacent still present. And true, honestly, it's been present. It's been present all season. Not as much against the Michigan Stars, but like we were danger adjacent a lot against Flower City. We were actually dangerous against Albion, although I think Albion, contributed to that significantly. And we were very danger adjacent against Gold Star. That also became dangerous, although in one really good effort in the second goal and one kind of interesting, lucky, weird kind of play on Muma's first goal. That it was a header where the ball bounced and then went over a guy. Like that's a bit of odd set of circumstances.
Just remembering that, yeah.
Yeah. So in the Savannah game, we were definitely danger adjacent, and I think it's all the more frustrating that we gave up our first goal of the season. But like the sky isn't falling for me. Like we gave up our first goal of the season. That was a penalty that Jean nearly saved on one of the most strange set of circumstances I've ever seen. And honestly, like, and you could complain, is that a penalty? Is it not a penalty? I think it's soft as Charmin. And
oddly enough, we disagree on that. I think it was a penalty. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Those are going to get called against you sometimes, right, and they're going to not get called against you sometimes.
I also don't care about...
It's also one of the least bad calls of the game, if that tells you anything about the game.
I also just don't care about... my focus is not on the call of a penalty.
Yeah.
My focus is on the guy that went studs up through his own teammate, and then one of our guys gets taken out in the fray, and they just kind of the referee doesn't do anything when all 21 players stop. Like that's where my issue. Like that's the egregious call, not necessarily the penalty.
Well, if we want to talk through that, play to the fucking whistle, everybody for both teams. That one guy gets a giant bunch of extra credit, and everybody else on the field doesn't.
So you've got like insane set of circumstances that begets the first goal we've conceded all season.
Sure.
And it was a penalty. It wasn't anything from open play.
Yes.
And that's it. Like Savannah had one, like that shot early. That was it a shot? Was it a cross? It was probably a shot.
That we headed across. That we headed out.
No, I'm referring to the one in the first minute.
Oh yeah. That one is not as dangerous as.
It's not. It's dangerous if it's a cross and the guy's actually there. It's not dangerous if it's a shot because it was so far out in a bad angle.
Also, he just doesn't do it. Yeah.
But my point is
the angle is closed. It would take a hell of a good.
My point is like this is. I think this can be considered our worst game of the season, given home, the opponent we were playing. We actually had rest this time. Hi, Ella. And we come out with a draw where we get scored on a penalty kick, and Savannah does fuck all for the rest of the game.
Would you call this to comparing it to last season, our Flower City?
Yes. It has all the hallmarks of Flower City for me. The goal comes in a wild set of circumstances. We do enough. We do enough to win the game. We create enough to win the game, and it's not enough.
But we
created enough to still win the game on the day, and that's football. Sometimes you don't. So like I'm just not. I think there's some question marks that need to be. answered, and I think maybe more importantly that it's time for a break. Yeah, and I think the boys really could use a break.
I agree with that. Now, let's rewind and let's go to the beginning of the game. So, game finished 1-1. If you didn't catch that, if you somehow missed that, you're listening to this. Game finished 1-1. Chattanooga Football Club getting a goal in the end to equalize it. The starting lineups went like this. Jean-Antoine at goalkeeper, right back Colin Stripling, become this is our starting lineup now, let's be real, for the foreseeable future. Anatoly Prepelica at right center back, Aiden Bowers at left center back Joseph Perez, which there's a little bit of a wrinkle here later in the game that we'll definitely talk about. Richard Dixon played the 6, central midfielder Alex McGrath, central midfielder Luis Garcia Souza, Mutaya Mwape at right wing. That could change a little bit. The winger's not decided, but everyone up until now I think is locked in starters. Left wing Juan Louis, again, something to be decided there. We'll see what happens in the striker Marcus Nagelstad. So, coming out of the starting lineup, Matthew, what were you thinking going into the game after you saw that starting lineup?
So I really I thought Damian struggled against Michigan Stars, and he had played essentially 62 minutes against Birmingham, and then I think he went the full 90 against Michigan Stars, and he had a couple good moments, but he just struggles with heavy physicality if it's not going to be called.
Yes, and the Michigan Stars got away with plenty of heavy physicality in that game.
So I'm not surprised to see him sit out this one, and he comes on halftime, and I thought he was a bright spark for us when he came on.
Agreed.
I think it probably says less about Damian that he didn't start this game, and says more about the return of Mutaya Mwape.
Mm-hmm.
And Muma gets pulled at halftime, and he did not have a great game.
It was not his best game.
But I think it's more, and maybe this will be my third key that we'll get to in more detail later. But I think this game was just about getting Mumu back on the field and getting him some minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And because he got hurt in Des Moines in the Open Cup game, which was, by the way, a month ago.
And he's played literally 5 minutes since then.
Yeah, he played 9 minutes against Flower City at the end. He was subbed on for 30 seconds for a penalty against Birmingham.
Yeah.
I thought the telling thing was he didn't play at all against Michigan Stars.
Yep, where we could have really used his creativity if he were to be at 100%.
And I just wonder if he just turns out he wasn't quite at 100%. And so he goes and he gets 45 against Savannah, And I think those are 45 minutes that are more about breaking rust than really anything else. And I think it needs to be viewed through that lens in terms of his performance. So, and then there's Juan Louis on the left where he played a lot for Syracuse and where we've seen him at times for us this year. And I thought he struggled a little bit too. But like, I think maybe, and this is maybe one of your big points. I don't think there were a lot of like 8 out of 10 performances from the team or from the individuals. You know what I mean?
No, and you know what? Honestly, let's go with just my point number one. We can kind of bounce into that. The hangover was real. We mentioned the Michigan Stars game was a hangover game. We felt really good about going on the road, getting a point, not conceding anything after a really tough 120 minutes against Birmingham. A week later, I expected that this could be a trap game, but also that we would fight through it and that we would, not be that hungover. I think this was the real hangover game. Just to be quite frank, we didn't show up sharp enough. Every pass was just a little bit off for the first 60 minutes. Every ball was just a little bit short. And when you play in a game with fine margins, which soccer is a game of fine margins, this one was exceptionally hard, especially with the referee being terrible. And I'm not making an excuse. The referee being terrible doesn't contribute to us. It does contribute to us not winning, but that's not an excuse. We are better than Savannah. We should have beat Savannah. And what we unfortunately did, in my eyes, is came out for the first 60 minutes with the wrong mentality. I don't know. I think that is probably due to fatigue and a really tough first stretch of the season, and we really need these 2 weeks off. But for the first 60 minutes, we were not very good overall. And we were unlucky to be down 1-0, but we were not great. And I think that was a mentality problem because that last 30 minutes, we absolutely put it to them. We took it to them. We had them pinned back. We were waves and waves of attack. And look, that just tells me that we could have done that and should have done that to begin the game, and we didn't. And look, we can learn from this game. We can grow from this game. We should trust the process here that we will come together and coalesce as a group and get better at how we play. But this is not how you want to see us come out and approach a game.
Yeah.
And then that I don't think anybody had, except for maybe Jean, had a great game. Everybody was a little less than sharp, whether it was on the ball, whatever.
Yeah, I think I would classify him at good, not great, and he loses points because he got fingertips on the PK and not a full hand.
I'm not taking.
But I'm not going to penalize him. Like, penalties get scored at like 80% rate in the lower divisions. Like, I'm not penalizing him for that.
I'm gonna argue with your point and say you can't take anything away from him from a penalty. He didn't concede it, and he got this close to getting it. He comes out and gets the 3 balls he needs to get. Correct. Over top of people. Like, you can give him a 10. You can give him a 9 in this game. The only reason you don't give him a 10 is because you have to like stop a penalty to get a 10 or whatever. But other than John, I think everybody kind of had a hangover game. And here's to having 2 weeks off, resetting, recharging. If folks remember last year, we went through our first little phase and then we made big changes tactically and whatever else. And we came out really flying in that second phase of the season. Let's hope the same thing happens. But it is not all doom and gloom, Matthew, now that I've given my kind of doom and gloom one, which isn't outlook for the season. It was just a disappointing Saturday. Do you want to talk about how we are worldwide and we have highlights going on in Moldova for the goal that Anatoly scored?
That was interesting.
So that was fun. I wish Ella was out here so I could make her like try to live translate that on the television right now. That'd be funny. But Anatoly got some airtime, we saw on Twitter, in his native Moldova, I believe, talking about his scoring of the goal. And the last highlight there of that clip, if you watch the whole clip, is him scoring the second goal. It doesn't count, which, fuck that referee. So that's the first thing. We are worldwide. CFC is a massive club. Matthew, tell me a little bit about, because I know you got real excited when we went to a 3-man defense or 3-man back line rather in that second half.
So I think we play 3-man at times just as a function, and I think formalizing it was super interesting. I think it was mostly because it's the cleanest way when you're down a goal chasing the game to get 2 strikers on at the same time. And we have the pieces for it, right? Like, Bowers, Prepelica, and Stripling are all nominally center backs. sort of.
Don't forget Richard Dixon.
Yeah, he's a midfielder forever and forever now. But like, so we already
he was kind of playing left center back there for a minute, though.
Yeah, when Bowers was exclusively taking throw-ins. So you've kind of got the pieces for it now, without actually having to change personnel. And like Joseph Perez, for example, who was subbed off to create the 3-5-2. He played that left center back, or that left wing back role. Excuse me. He played that left wing back role for LA Force in their 3-man system. So like this is not unheard of for a lot of players. And truthfully, Damian was out on the right hand side during that 3-5-2, and that's a position that he would play in the 3-man system under Coach Fuller in the fall of 2021 when we were playing 3-man back then. So it was interesting. I think it's just a product of the moment.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be mad about seeing it at times.
So I don't...
Because, and I sorry to cut you off there, but like, because I thought Lenny was pretty decent. I thought Lenny provided a little bit of spark. Like, he's got that athleticism. He's got some good hold-up play. When you have a forward that can like hold the ball up, like with a big physical presence, and like is athletic enough to get in behind, that's a weapon that we've not had.
You're missing the most important thing he did. He helped up so many players. He stretched out so many cramping players. He was such a nice boy that whole second half. He was such a gentleman, and he really showed them some Southern hospitality. I'm not being sarcastic. You guys can go back and watch that. He was a beautiful gentleman. I will say that I think I'll take an even hotter take than you. I don't think we'll start it because I don't think Rod's going to start it. I think we have a secondary formation when last year we did not have a secondary formation, in part because maybe we weren't good enough at the first formation. And I'm not saying we weren't good enough. I'm saying maybe Rod didn't want to add a second formation because maybe we still had work to do on the first one. I think we have a second formation. I think we saw it because we actually clearly went to it. Here's the thing I will say. If our wingers are as ineffective against a 5-man as we were last game for large portions of that, where they were outnumbered and consistently they were like 3-on-1 with us defensively, and we just weren't going to be able to beat that. Going to a 2-striker formation, which this was like, it was weird because Lenny was mostly out left and then coming central, but going to a 2-striker system where Marcus can float and Lenny can occupy men, and then somebody can get up and down the field on the wings from whether it's Damian, because basically we played Juan Luis and Damian. We almost played a 3-3-4 essentially. Like we had 4 attackers essentially the whole time. We had Juan Luis, Damian. I guess Fabian was in there too, so maybe we played a 3-2-5.
Fabian replaced Juan Luis.
One thing I didn't do... Oh, we played Juan Luis. Okay. One thing I didn't go back and do is watch really how we played that, and it'll be interesting to see if we come back in and play that again. But I will say I don't think it's crazy to... If our wingers are not having the desired effect, to play the 2-striker system, to try Marcus and Lenny together and see if you can't free up some space for Marcus to get his shooting boots on and Lenny to occupy some defenders and also stretch them going deep.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. It was a good look. I think it created some problems. We were already starting to move with the intensity and whatever, but like I do think the formation change actually helped precipitate like getting the bigger chances down the stretch.
Sure.
Maybe more so than turning up the intensity or whatever in the 60th, 64th minute.
We decided we wanted to play, which was helpful. So I'll give you another piece here that was also fun and interesting and new. Matthew, long throw-ins. The long throw-in trait is a thing that Aiden Bowers would have on FIFA if FIFA wasn't such a stupid game and included CFC.
Yeah, I really wish co-host Jay was here right now.
He does love a long throw, and right now, if he's listening to this, he's seething because we're misrepresenting every time we talk about long throws, we misrepresent how he actually feels. But yeah, not here to defend yourself, buddy. Sorry.
That's what you get.
So yeah, long throw-ins. Aiden Bowers threw a long throw-in. The goal that was disallowed, that should have been allowed, was a long throw-in. We created several very dangerous chances.
The biggest chance of the night came from a long throw-in. And
yes.
No, it's not the goal that was disallowed. No, it's not the corner that we actually scored on. And no, it's not any of the other things we did. The long throw in It's roughly 88th minute. It's right after Fabian comes on. Maybe a minute, 2 minutes later. The long throw in that Prepelica flicks on directly to Fabian inside the 6, and it's a little high, and he's got to volley the thing. That's the best chance we created all night. I mean, that is it's high, so it's like on the ground. It's a ridiculously high XG chance. On the volley, it's not quite as good, but like it's still pretty good because it's just so close to the goal.
It's a big chance. It's a tough finish because of how it's bouncing, but it's a very, very high percentage chance.
I think, and this is why I don't have much doom and gloom for the outlook on the season.
You can go with your third point here.
No, we'll get there. We'll get there a little bit later. No, the reason why I don't have as much doom and gloom outlook is like if we're creating the best chance of the game. I mean, like Chattanooga FC under Rod Underwood. If we're creating the best chance of the game on a long throw in, everybody look the fuck out when the offense starts really clicking.
Yep, yeah, that's a very good point, Matthew.
Because like if we can do that and like the normal tiki taka stuff, like have fun.
That's true. All right, I'm going to give you a couple more points. The penalty kick. I know you and I disagree on this. It's a freak accident. It's a freak moment. We already talked about that. You don't think it was a penalty. I think it was a penalty, but here's the thing. And I am not blaming this game on the referee. We have to be better, and we are better than Savannah, and we got to come out. Sorry, I know I'm plastering our guys with like a little bit of, negativity here, but like you got to come out with a better mentality so that you just take it to Savannah, because Savannah should never feel like they have a fucking chance if they roll into Finley Stadium. On another day, Juan Luis gets a clear-cut penalty.
Yeah.
They should have been down a man for some shit that happened during the game. Like, there's some other things. We get a penalty that is, I think, the same level as that other penalty, but at worst, we should have each had a penalty. And at best, maybe we have a penalty and they don't.
I would have complained about the penalty stuff a lot less if they were both given or neither one were given.
Yes, I agree with that.
And like, because like at the end of the day, you just want referees to be consistent.
Yes.
And you don't want referees to establish that there is one standard for one player and a different standard for a different player or for a different team.
Oh, you mean like Anatoly being tall and big?
Yeah, like like we can talk about the disallowed goal. Like he is being fouled. Like on that play, they are like trying to like get on his back and he happens to be and like look at the crowds at the parade. Like someone is trying to actually get on his back.
Like a child getting on his dad's back to watch the parade? Yeah.
Yes. And like if the ball's in the air when that is happening, and by the way it was, that's a penalty. Like you can't just like jump on somebody like that. So he has to free himself from that, number one.
Then he goes hip to hip with a guy,
yeah,
and he gets penalized for being big.
Yeah,
he gets they call a foul on him because he's big.
And in like the second minute or
it's illegal to be big,
or third
Matthew.
minute, he got cleaned out by a player, like off ball cleaned out, and nothing was done. Not even a foul was called.
Were you watching?
There was a different standard.
Were you watching yeah, there was for the whole game. Were you watching when he physically threatened someone's life in the middle of the game?
Yeah, that tracks for him.
He pulled back his fist, and he like I said, "I will punch you if you do that again." And the referee saw, and it was like the referee's only lucid moment of the game where he went, hey, keep your head. And he pointed at his brain, like, keep your head, don't lose your head.
If only the ref had followed his own advice in that moment.
It was bad.
Because he never had his head in the game. And I was being very, very clear earlier when I said that, like, we still created enough to win this game. And I didn't mention the referee or the calls. Because I think that's the first point, is we did create enough to win this game. Penalty being called, not being called, goal disallowed aside.
Yeah, and I'm also just not going to blame refs this year. I didn't blame refs last year. I didn't let Coach Fuller 2 years ago, I didn't let Coach Fuller get away with blaming the referees when we didn't play well enough. And I love Coach Fuller, but there were times where we weren't playing well enough and the referees were terrible. And like sometimes you're just not good enough. And last night we weren't good enough to get the win because we didn't finish the balls, but we created enough to actually win the games, if that makes sense. So I am trying to be consistent in my judging of.
Yeah, what I will say about referees is like sometimes refs miss calls, and that's something you're just going to have to live with because the refereeing standard in this country is lower than the playing standard.
Yes.
Is like you're just going to have to deal with it at times. Like they're going to miss calls at times. Mm-hmm. And you hope it's not a big call, you hope it's not a big moment. Like that's all you can hope for.
Yep.
But there is I think the problem with this particular referee in general is like there was no standard for the game. And there's the moment, by the way, where they're about to concede the goal. Like the guy goes and studs up there. It's a red card that wasn't even whistled.
It's a problem. I'll say the last thing, and then we'll wrap up on the referees, and we'll get to our 3 points.
No, one more thing for me about the referee.
Okay, go ahead.
It's the kind of performance that, and this occasionally happens, but it's the kind of performance that gets referee assigners really, really uncomfortable with playing you again. Like he did himself, like think about the referee, for example. This guy does like high school games or some shit. This is probably his first ever step into the pro ranks. And I think it's very clear. We talked about this in the Flower City game. The referee just not being prepared and like didn't have a headset and like not being prepared for the moment. And like that's on whoever's assigning the referees. It's on the league for paying for shit or not paying at all or cheapening out on trying to get as good referees as possible into the league games.
You know what might have happened? Maybe they thought Savannah paid this time and we were the ones who didn't pay last time, so that's where they were benefiting Savannah.
So like you've got those dynamics in terms of the league side, which is a problem. But like if you are a ref assigner or if you do your due diligence at all, and I don't know if there was any done, you got to be like, you hung this guy out to dry because he was not ready, he was not prepared, and he clearly did not have the moment, or was not prepared for the moment, and it showed. And this guy makes money refereeing games. He's going to have to do a better job, and this game probably is going to cost him a little bit. But like, results matter in this business, and for players and coaches, results matter, and it's unacceptable to on the refereeing side. It's unacceptable to hang the guy out to dry, to set him up for failure, and that's a problem in this country. And like that's my maybe most nuanced take I can make is like I don't want to just blame the referee here. I think the system failed him a little bit too.
Yeah, I don't care. Like everybody gets their first chance. He was terrible. Let him get another chance another time. We just have to be better.
Yeah. Maybe.
And he needs to be better too, clearly. But like, you know, I also heard it was one of his first pro games he's ever reffed. I'm not going to blame the guy for a bad first game. Sometimes you have a bad first game. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
The offsides lines judges, if I'm being really honest here, I went back and watched. I've got a bunch of screenshots that I'm definitely going to be too lazy to work into this this show here. But like Damien's ball out of bounds that cut back to Alex that he scored was out of bounds. Damien was offside just barely once or twice.
I didn't see any bad calls on the far side of the where we had the full view.
But I can tell you in the game, I thought we were getting absolutely robbed. And I went back and watched, and the righteous indignation that I would have if we did get robbed by the lines judge, I don't have, because I think the lines judge, contrary to the center official, who was absolutely terrible, the lines judge is, as far as I can tell, and there's a couple you can't see the final defender, so I can't tell for sure, but it certainly looks like they basically got it right. So,
yeah.
And I want to move on from refereeing here. We've already spent way too much time on something that isn't. It doesn't matter. Like, it's not us. Like, on to the next thing. We're going to beat everybody this year. Fuck everyone else.
There it is.
I'm going to go straight through my two key takeaways. And by the way, we have 6 minutes. Defense is still real good. This is my second takeaway. The first was the hangover was real that I talked about earlier. The defense is really good. Jean in the air is chef's kiss. I have that written down in my notes. The defense basically did not allow a good shot on goal. The one shot on goal that was a quote unquote a big chance was pushed far wide, and he would have had to have a hell of a finish to finish. Even in a game where we had a hangover game, and I kind of lambasted us for our quote unquote like mentality. Our defense still allowed basically nothing. This year, the balance of defense to offense is exactly what we hoped it would be in the preseason, in the sense that we are just really good defensively. Whether or not we're good offensively on a day, our defense is just very good. So I feel extremely good, as you said, about the upcoming season and our outlook for the season, because I don't believe our defense will get significantly worse. I think our defense should continue to get better as they play more together, and our offense is what we have time to work on. and working on that from a base of a very good defense, which last year our defense was because of really good playing together and really good defensive possession. Now it's based on just really good defenders and Jean just being so hard to beat both in goal and in the air. Last thing I will say, my number 3 is Taylor's absence. We felt that. We really felt that against the Stars, and we really felt that here against Savannah. Look, he was such a game changer the first part of the season, and we need him back desperately for his creative spark. And Mumu's return from injury, he is not back to his peak. It was 2 games, but he was so good in those first 2 games.
Yeah,
we really miss the super dynamism that we had those first couple games on the wings.
Yeah,
and when those guys come back, not if, but when those guys come back to full fitness and full form, we are going to be a fucking problem. Matthew, I think you've done the end of phase 1. Time for a break.
Yeah.
So
just briefly, like we broke in the end of season pod last year. We broke down the season into phases. This is the end of phase 1. There's a clear break. We've got a couple weeks. It falls at the exact same time as the 2-week break did after phase. I guess we included 1 game in phase 2 for last year, but like it's in the same point. We've played 5 games in the league, 11 points, 3 wins, 2 draws, and the guys are tired and
they had a long ass preseason,
a long preseason. And I think the tiring is not actually the games they've played, although that Flower City, Birmingham, Michigan trip, I think took a lot out of everyone.
Sure.
Or stretch, I should say. But like it's more in the fact that like the preseason and then the season happened right afterwards. And I think there's going to be some really useful time off, and hopefully it helps like get guys some better feeling in their legs and a little bit more time to be cohesive on the practice field, so that offense starts clicking.
You want a hot take? Best team we've played in the league this year is still Flower City.
I'll accept that take. I'll accept it, actually.
Point number 2. I'll ask you a question. Matthew, are we overcomplicating build-up?
Maybe.
Are we resorting to Route 1 too early?
Maybe.
These all seem like questions for the staff to look at data and make adjustments during the break. Those are your words.
Yeah, so I believe that. Like
I do too.
We've had conversations aplenty about like the going long at times, and I think there's you want a healthy balance. Like you want to go long when you need to. You want to play short when you need to. You want to go around when you can. You want to play through lines and gaps when you can. You need to be able to do all these things to be a truly balanced team. I think there's going to be an interesting question mark for the staff to figure out is, are we settling for the long ball? Are we not being patient enough? Is it both of those things kind of working together? Or like, are we just taking the space that's available? I don't really know. And maybe we are complicating build up a little bit. And if we played like a little bit more simple, a little bit more straight up with our better players, let's not kid ourselves. We should be
better
able to,
players than the other teams, you mean?
Yeah, you should just be able to play straight up and like just be better than them, and like you get your one-on-one matchup and just go by them. It doesn't actually work that way. But
also,
like,
Rod's a system coach, so that's just not true.
Correct. So that's not going to be the solution, right? But like I think this is a good moment in time to take a look at these first few games of the season and see like what truly worked really well, what has not been working well. I think, the 5 goals against Albion maybe overshoots like what we've actually been offensively so far. And by the way, that should terrify any opponent that we play, because the defense has been incredibly good. We're not giving up fuck all, and the offense isn't quite there yet. And by the way, we're still on 2.2 points per game.
Yep.
Look out, folks.
Like, still undefeated.
If they like,
we've allowed 1 goal, and it was a penalty that is questionable.
Yeah. So like, I think there's a ton of room for growth here, and I think that's exciting for listeners. I think it's exciting for fans, and this break comes at actually a really good time for us.
Let me give you one. I'm going to add one thing. I don't. The overcomplicating build-up thing, I don't think we are. I think we are resorting to Route 1 too early. That's probably fatigue related, and we'll see where that comes. This is the first game that I felt we resorted to Route 1 too early. I will say one thing that is for sure that we can see in the data and on the screen: we need to get Marcus more shots.
Oh yeah, absolutely. His only 2 shots were from free kick opportunities.
And he had a couple chances to be selfish.
He passed up 2
Yeah.
that he could have shot, that would have almost certainly been blocked for one of them. And I think the second one, I think he upgraded the chance to Alex McGrath.
Right.
Alex.
So that's not it's not an indictment on Marcus.
Yeah,
it's
an
indictment on those around him to help get him shots. And like whatever we do, it's, by the way, it's one of the reasons we got good last year was you get the player who's excellent at hitting the ball, and get shots. We got to get Marcus more shots. Last point, Matthew, about Fabian Rodriguez.
Yeah. So it's the 87th minute. We're down a goal in a league match. And Rod turns to the bench and subs on 17-year-old Fabian Rodriguez.
I think he's 18 now.
Maybe he's 18. An academy.
It's a better story if he's 17.
An academy player. That is one part amazing and like awesome for Fabian to get that kind of trust from Rod. And I think he's earned it.
You don't get that trust from Rod without earning it, by the way.
Right. And also, like, it's a product of some injuries, like Taylor Gray's not in the lineup, for example. But I think what it shows is, yes, we wanted a result. Fabian was probably the best player in Rod's eyes for whatever he was trying to do to help get the result. Spoiler alert, it worked. And I think it shows incredible commitment that the game against Savannah was not the end all be all. The end all be all is what happens after 24 matches in the league.
Yes.
And
when we go to the playoffs,
and you get to the playoffs,
we try to take a ship home. Yeah,
that's when it counts. And I think, the offense struggling a little bit to put together lots of shots for players where we can score goals. The commitment to bringing on an academy player in a super important high leverage moment. I think that speaks a lot to the trusting of the process that this group has. This is not a final product. They've got a long way to go, but I think they're building something. And I think we've talked about this on this podcast before. Progress is not linear. So, that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to end phase 1 and have a little bit of a break. And we'll start phase 2 at Flower City in a couple weeks.
I have one more question before we close this out, Matthew. Over under 7.5 on player of the matches for Anatoly Prepelitsa this season.
Out of 24? How many does he already have?
24.
Like
I think
3?
he has 3.
Yeah, I'll take the over.
It's unbelievable. Everybody, thank you for listening. We will be back to review the next games, a women's game pretty soon, and with a Coach Randy pod here in the near future, and a Alex, the badass women's administrator, field general, all things ops lady that is going to be with us. So spoiler alert here in a few minutes.
Yeah. So just so everyone's aware, we've got we're home against Nashville Rhythm on Saturday, May 20 at 3 p.m. Then we are away at Flower City. The men are at 7:30, also on Saturday, May 20. So we're gonna have. I don't know how we're gonna.
Sounds like
off.
I'm going straight from the game to the bar.
Yeah. So we've also got Albion at home that week, May 24, and then we host a doubleheader, FC Birmingham for the women and Maryland Bobcats for the men.
Y'all remember to hydrate.
That's gonna be a crazy stretch. There are 5 games in what I think is 8 days
between the men's and the women's teams.
Between the men's and women's teams. And so we've got a little bit of a crazy stretch coming up. I'm going to enjoy a little bit of a break. I've got a big conference next week, which comes at a perfect time.
Lucky you. Well, Matthew, thank you for joining me. Thank you for the preview of that. And I can't wait for the women to kick off. We will see you guys soon. Peace.